The root of all this, the root of why the Fed is raising interest rates is inflation, and there's been two recent reports that came out in the past few weeks that have shown inflation meaningfully falling even more than expected as well. So it's been a lot of good news for the Biden administration. I'm sure the White House is excited after this most recent GDP report as well.
Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle, and I'm joined today by economics reporter Zach Halaschak. Zach, we've got new economic news. President Biden running for re-election, hoping to keep up a pace of certain GDP growth, avoid recession. What have we learned?
It's been a big week for the economy. This week, the Fed raised interest rates again to 5.25% to 5.5%, the highest they've been since the dot-com bubble in 2001. So way up there, but at the same time, we also got in the latest GDP report. It's the first such report for the second quarter of this year. It showed that GDP increased by 2.4%. 2% was last quarter, quarter one, first quarter. So it exceeded expectations because most economists had expected it would fall to 1.7% growth. So it's another good sign for the Biden administration and shows the economy is still humming even despite interest rates being this high at this, kind of historic level.
Right, and that's sort of the thing. I mean, 2.4% growth isn't amazing, but in the context of interest rates being increased, but the number of times they've been increased, the economy has shown some real resiliency so far.
Yeah, it has, and it's further proof of that is seen in the labor market, which added a little over 200,000 jobs last month. Obviously, it'll be interesting to see what July's labor report shows, but there's been several aspects of the economy that are performing better than expected, and the root of all this, the root of why the Fed is raising interest rates is inflation, and there's been two recent reports that came out in the past few weeks that have shown inflation meaningfully falling even more than expected as well. So it's been a lot of good news for the Biden administration. I'm sure the White House is excited after this most recent GDP report as well.
Now, could that mean that we might see an end to future interest rate hikes?
So yeah, at its last meeting, the Fed met this week, but its preceding meeting in June, Fed officials had signaled they thought there might be two more interest rate hikes. And so we just had this one, but after the duo of inflation reports that came out recently, most investors now think this is going to be the terminal hike, that this is going to be as high as interest rates get this year. And then from there, most people think the Fed's going to start pulling down rates sometime next year as everything comes back in equilibrium with that.
So there was another bit of economic good news, at least tentatively, that the Biden administration received. There's always been this worry about the UPS strike, big labor dispute. How is that, at least for the time being, resolved?
Yeah, so this within just days, the deadline to resolve the strike or this conflict between the Teamsters Union, which represents some 340,000 UPS employees, and the company was July 31st. And with just days to spare, an agreement was reached. And that's a big win for the Biden administration because if there would have been a strike and that many workers would have stopped work and walked out, it would have represented the largest strike against a single employer in U.S. history, but it would have wreaked havoc on the supply chains. And that would obviously look very bad for Biden, who obviously had issues with the supply chains back in 2001 and to last year. It would have been maybe a little bit of a rehash of that, and that certainly did not do well for his economic performance. But it's also a good thing because if Biden were put in the position where he'd have to intervene, then the unions would have been very unhappy with him and endangered critical union support in swing states like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and the Rust Belt, where
the very states that are likely to decide next year's election.
Yeah, the ones that matter the most, the swing states. So big news for him on that front too. So it's been a kind of a big week of wins for the Biden administration.
So he's hoping that UPS will give him a winning package.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you, Zach.
No problem.
You can read Zach and the rest of our policy team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.